as dead people who just walk around.
You're tuned at IntellectualRadio.com.
Good afternoon and welcome to this version of the Spiritual Mentor, and I'm Julia Knickerbocker, and we are here today on IntellectualRadio.com, where we feed your brain. Before we get started on today's topic, I want to invite the listeners of IntellectualRadio.com here in Chicagoland to the Journey to Wholeness Center next Sunday. I'm going to be hosting a Reiki share there, and Reiki is a hands-on healing modality that everyone can benefit from. And it's a free event, and I would like you to come down and join us at the other practitioners and learn a little bit more about Reiki, how Reiki can help you, how Reiki can help your family and friends, and the various things that you can do with Reiki once you become more accomplished with it. So I'm also listed at journeytowholeness.org for the different sessions and the classes that I have there. I also welcome all emails that you may have questions or suggestions for topics, and please send them to thespiritualmentor@gmail.com. And if you're enjoying the shows or you know somebody who would be interested in these shows, please share this information with them. You never know whose life you're going to make a positive effect on every day. And when we all try together, we're going to be able to grow and heal and learn together. So today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics. And I just want to ask you a couple questions. Have you ever been in your home or in an environment where you've heard a noise in another room, and when you walk into that other room, there's nobody there? Everything is just fine, nothing's knocked over. Or have you ever gone into a room and found that things were knocked over, but there's nobody in the room? Or have you ever experienced a point where you were doing something, I don't care if it's washing the dishes or just sitting and reading a book, and it feels like somebody reaches over and touches you, but there's nobody there? Some of these things are not created by what most people like to call ghosts, but everyone would call them a type of ghost. The situations that I described have been caused by a variety of different things over the years, and there's some confusion about them. There are three things we're going to talk about today, and they're the ghosts, there's detritus, and they're demons. And we're going to touch lightly on all three of them. It's an extensive topic. You can't really dig too deeply in just an hour. But I wanted to share a few things to help clarify some of the misconceptions that are out there. I don't think you could not see a Hollywood show or a movie produced that talks about ghosts, but in a very warped way. And the things that they put out there about demons are even more interesting than what the real life situation really is. But ghosts are often viewed as dead people who just walk around. Some people believe that they're tied to the place that they actually died in. Some people think that they just go and sit at their cemeteries. I've heard all kinds of interesting things over the years about what people think that ghosts do once they become that form of being. But let me ask you to think a little bit and to expand your idea of what ghosts really are. I've been working professionally at this for about 15 years. I specialize in the removal of negative energies and entities and beings from locations as well as from people. I have seen a great many things. A lot of times I get called in because somebody feels that their house is being haunted. They have a cold spot in a room, or they're hearing noises, and they, think that, not uncommonly, that there is a ghost in the house. And so I will go in and we'll have a discussion about what is actually in the house. But 9 times out of 10, what they're thinking is a ghost is actually a demon. And there's very large difference between a ghost and a demon. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of the differences today and let you do some thinking about that, and definitely send me some questions if you need any clarification. I started seeing ghosts when I was about 5 years old, and I've seen them off and on all my life. And as a 5-year-old, watching a series of people stand in your closet, just appearing out of nowhere and standing in your closet and just staring at you can be terrifying. I lived underneath the covers of my blankets every night for years because nobody believed me when I told them that I was seeing people. And then sometimes those people would come and stand over my bed. And then every now and then somebody would kneel next to my bed staring at me and reach out to touch me. It's not a pleasant way to go to sleep when you're a child. And it didn't feel safe, and it really hurt that nobody believed me when I told them about what I was seeing. So when I had my own children, I made a point of talking to them and telling them that if they saw anything, to let me know, because children shouldn't have to be afraid of the things that they hear or see at any point in time in their own home. Things happen, but you have to take into account that children are not emotionally developed enough to be able to handle the reality of a ghost or any kind of detritus, and especially not demons. They don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to process it. So when I see ghosts, it's not as if you're seeing somebody like in Hollywood where they create this almost see-through figure and they're walking along and they come towards you or they go away from you or they stand there and stare at you. People who are clairvoyant may have an ability to be able to see the ghosts. Not everybody who's clairvoyant can do this, but if you are clairvoyant in a lot of the different variations that it comes in, there's a strong possibility that you have the ability to see these things. I've been to a number of historical sites over the years, between my own education and sightseeing, and then my children, and then doing more sightseeing. And you can always find places that are advertising ghost walks, where you go and you pay a fee and somebody walks you around the city and you end up in weird alleyways and old buildings, and they tell you stories of so-and-so died here and they think he shows up every now and then, or this happens here. One of my favorite types of things that is usually told about a ghost is when you see this figure walking down the hallway at a certain time on certain nights. And it always happens every year. So maybe every Friday at midnight, this person walks down the hallway, goes into a room, and then they disappear. You walk down the hallway, there's nobody in the room. And it's like, oh, these are ghosts. And I'm like, no, those aren't ghosts. They're what I call emotional imprints. Emotional imprints are created by living people, where they are so emotionally distressed about something that it actually creates a little tear in the fabric of the energy in that location. And so you're seeing this imprint as it lives out its particular form of being. There's a way to take care of it. We can eliminate that. That's a form of detritus. It's not a ghost. Ghosts are people. They're just without bodies. Many of them, and most of them, still think of themselves as the person they were when they lived this lifetime. A lot of times they stay here because they think they don't want to leave their friends or their family, the people that they love. They don't want to go to where the unknown is. They're afraid of what might be waiting for them if they do go on to the other side. And so when you are in an environment where there actually is a ghost, 99% of the time you're not going to know that they're actually there unless you have the particular gifts that allow you to sense them. I remember one night working at home, and I walked into my office, and sitting on the couch in my office were two little old ladies. They looked like they were dressed in clothes out of the 30s. They had these little weird curl things going on with their hair. They looked like they were in their 70s or something like that, and they had to have been twins because they were wearing almost identical outfits, and they looked very, very identical. And they just started talking to me, and just talking and talking about how, they'd gotten there and found me. And it's one of those situations where I had to shut them up so I could make them move on. But it's that kind of thing that when you have the gifts and the abilities to see them and to sense them, they know that. They can recognize that within a person's energy vibration. So they are drawn to the people that they know will actually be able to see them or hear them. No, I have never seen anybody covered in blood or looking like they just died, like the Sixth Sense portrayed with that poor little boy. Everybody who comes to me looks just like they probably envisioned themselves in their lifetime. And that's okay. I don't need to have the gore that goes along with some of the people's experiences, but I know that's one of the questions I get asked an awful lot, and it's a little disappointing for people when they realize that that's not happening. But if you really want to have an opportunity where you might be able to see a ghost, to sense a ghost, go to your mall. Go to your shopping mall, big enclosed shopping mall, by the Cheesecake Factory, wherever, where you're walking down the hallway. And I want you to pay attention when you're walking down the hallway, because they'll actually stand in the middle of that big walkway, and people will walk right through them. And sometimes they'll latch onto somebody and steal some of their energy. But a lot of times they just stand there, just staring at people because they want to be around people. You'll find that some of them will go to certain locations where they were spent time with their family or their loved ones. Sometimes they even attach themselves to a physical location, but that's rare. And sometimes I have come across several items that actually had one attached to the item. That is very rare as well. I remember when I was working years ago, a friend of mine at work had passed to me a bag of clothes that was going around that somebody had cleaned out their closet, and they were just giving the clothes away, and they wanted people who liked the clothes to take the clothes. And I was going through the clothes because my kids were in a growing phase, and I thought, well, this might have something in there. And I pulled out a red pullover sweater. It was kind of like the cable knit. It was thick and it was heavy. And as I pulled out the sweater, I realized that there was this young man standing in front of me. And it was just one of those moments where you're like, wow, okay, who are you and why are you in my room? And they usually tell me why they're in the room, but he was very angry. And over time, I found out that he was attached to the sweater. He had given his girlfriend this sweater, and then he had died shortly after that. And he had wanted to stay connected to her, so he had put his energy into the sweater and attached to it. Well, she at some point in time didn't want it anymore, so she'd given the sweater away, and he had ended up in all of these different environments with people touching the sweater and setting it aside. So it was one of those situations where, okay, we needed to take care of this. And so I told him, I said, we're going to let you move on and take care of that, and you won't be attached to the sweater anymore, and somebody else can actually use the sweater. But it's not that uncommon to find the ghosts in environments where they are comfortable. People like to think that Grandpa died in this house, so Grandpa's actually living in the house or staying in the house, when the reality is that could just be any ghost, because they want to be around the living. They want to be around people's energy. When they are around people's energy, that gives them enough energy to stay awake, as I call it, because if they're not taking in energy, then they start to go into this vegetative kind of state. And so they will go up to people and they will lightly touch your auric layers, and they will pull energy to them. Now, there are some that are very negative, and they will actually attach to you through your solar plexus chakra, and they will just stay with you. They won't just reach up and touch you and then leave. They will actually stay attached to you, and they will suck energy from you for as long as they can. This is very interesting because when they do this, they actually start transferring a little bit of their personality to the person who they've attached to. So somebody could be absolutely normal and then all of a sudden start having mannerisms that really didn't match up who they'd been before. And that's usually the case when I look at them to determine what is attached to them and where it is attached. Because the third chakra connects to the energetic layer of the auric layers that are around the body. And so when they go right into that third chakra, they can just latch on to the energy and just suck it out. Whereas when they touch your auras as you're walking through them or whatever, it's not that big of a stream of energy going back and forth. So what about the noises that you hear in a room but there's nobody there, or maybe something got knocked over and there's nobody in the room? Well, there are different things that actually can take the energy in the room and create a sound so that it sounds like something that you recognize. Maybe it's a book falling over or something falling off a table or just a loud clapping noise. And this is a very common type of noise that is made by the detritus. And it's to get your attention, because when they have your attention, then they can attach to you. It makes you more vulnerable because you're coming into the environment where they have been working in and you are entering into their space. And so that makes you vulnerable. There are ways to prevent that. There are ways to keep that out. And we'll get into that in a little while. One of my favorite ghost experiences happened early in the 2000s. I was in bed with my then husband when suddenly he wakes me up and he says, "There's something standing at the end of the bed." And I'm like, "Well, what is standing at the end of the bed?" And he's like, "Well, there's something huge, huge and dark, huge, massive and dark with red glowing eyes." And I'm looking at the end of the bed and I don't see that. I see something there, but not huge with red glowing eyes. So I'm like, "Okay, well, let me take care of it." And he's like, no, I want to wait." And I'm like, "Why do you want to wait?" He goes, "I think that's my grandpa." And I'm like, "Why in the heck would your grandpa show up in our bedroom like a big black dark thing with red glowing eyes? Why would you want to think that your grandpa would show up that way?" Well, the thing about ghosts, the thing about detritus, and the thing about demons particularly, is they have the ability to reach into your mind and they can see what makes you afraid of. So if you have a fear of spiders, maybe you will see a large spider if you are having something projected into your mind. I worked at a location for a while, and when I would walk into the bathroom, there would be this massive spider on the back wall. I don't like spiders at all. And so I would look at that and I'm like, "Well, that's got to go. I've got to fix that at some point, because this is not fun when you walk into a bathroom and you see a big spider." But it works for a variety of things because they can pull information out of your brain, out of who you are. They can see your entire life and they know what freaks you out. And they use that response of the fear that you have to be able to reach in and attach to you. And this is something I think is very important, because when they exist on the energetic level, they have to have an energy source that keeps them there. Otherwise, like with ghosts, they start to fall asleep. Detritus floats around and attaches to people, and demons are very particular about who they attach to and why they attach to them. This little guy who was standing at the end of my bed had a lot of detritus attached to him. He was very dark. Instead of seeing a person, all I could see was this cloudy image of dark splotchy things all over him. Well, I told him I was in the middle of school and working full time, so I told him to wait into the office and not bother my children. I would take care of him in a few days. Well, he got tired of waiting, and so he went into my bedroom at some point in time, into my closet one night, and I got up in the middle of the night, and he had taken a stack of papers of about 4 inches that were my kids' homework, their little certificates, all their little things that you're supposed to put into little books to keep for them when they get older, and he had scattered them over the entirety of my bathroom. I've never had that opportunity before then to actually see them actually manifest enough energy to do that. Because in general, ghosts don't have that kind of energy. They don't have an energy source inside of them anymore. When you are alive, you have a constant energy source. It comes down, it goes into what we call the channel, and it roots you to the planet. But when you die, you don't have that connection anymore. There's no energy coming in. You're just kind of floating out there. So that's why they steal the energy, because they don't have that internal energy anymore. So for them to actually manifest something on the physical level that you can actually see takes a great deal of energy. Well, we had a long conversation, and I helped him move along, and it was just very interesting because he'd been around in that state for about 150 years. And he was what I call the problem children. Most ghosts, they're insignificant. They're harmless. They're not going to do anything radical or harmful to people. But when you have problem children, which the kind that attach to your third chakra, I also lump into the problem children category, they have done something while they're in this state of being dead to other people. In his particular case, he'd been there for about 150 years in the Carolina area, and he had been a young man in his late 20s, early 30s, when a friend of his found out that he was in love with somebody else, and it wasn't appropriate. It wasn't done. It was a no-no in that time and place, and they came and they hung him. They literally hung him up in a tree, let him die there. And eventually they took the body down, but he stayed in that location for a while. He was very angry at his friend for telling somebody else that he cared for somebody. He was very angry that his trust had been betrayed, and he was very angry that he was killed, which can be a very normal process for some of the ghosts that we encounter. For him, he had taken that a step further. Because he lived in an environment that was, or rather he had died in an environment that was more in a natural state, shall we say, and there was a cliff there. People would come up and picnic in the area. People would come out at night and have to get-togethers and things like that. And over the years, he started creating these little lights that people would follow. And so you'd see a light in the forest or a light by the ridge area. And people would go to see what that light was. And he would lead them over the cliff. And a number of people had died because of what he was doing. When you harm somebody, when you're in this state, it's what I call sin. You cannot move on to the next stage until we clear that up. We have to clean that out entirely, and then you can move on just like everybody else. But once they cross that bridge there, and they actually start to deliberately harm somebody, either stealing their energy or hurting them in other ways, it takes a lot more effort to get them into a position where they can actually be passed through. And it's sad because I hear a lot of very sad stories. I will sit there in my room and all of a sudden I'll be overwhelmed with the smell of cigarette smoke. And somebody will be standing next to me trying to get my attention, and I wasn't focused on them, so I get overwhelmed with this smell, and sometimes it's the smell of cigarette smoke. Sometimes it was the smell of car exhaust. Sometimes it's been other chemical smells. It just really depends, because people die from a multiple number of reasons, and they also die from different causes as well as accidents. So I would have different ways that they would attract my attention, but having that smell come in and just permeate you is really nasty. And so it gets your attention pretty quick. But I've had them do other things, because one night I was in my living room. I was reading. It was late. My kids were in bed, and the light went off. And so I'm like, okay, is it the bulb? So I get up and I flip the switch. Nothing happens to it. So I go over to the wall to pull out the plug, and the light comes back on. I'm like, okay, is it a faulty wire? And I'm checking the wire. I'm like, this hadn't happened before. I'd had the lamp for a couple of years. There was nothing wrong with it that I knew. So I went to sit back down on the couch again, and the light went out. And I'm like, okay. And I go and I check the little breaker box. I make sure nothing's thrown off. I was a little tired at that point in time, so I was obviously very dense about what was happening. So I come back in from the garage, and the light just starts flickering, off and on, off and on, off and on. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I got it. I got it. So we had a little conversation that they didn't need to do that. They could just wait in the waiting area that I had set up for them, but they were very impatient. And I'm like, well, these things happen. They create noises. They can do small things that manifest, such as turning on the light and turning off the light. Light is energy. They can manipulate energy. Picking something up and levitating it across the room and dropping it is not something that I've ever seen any of them do. I've met a lot of them. I've gone through a lot of them. Things like that's more demon-oriented. So that's a little introduction to ghosts and some of the things that they do, and give you something to think about, because most of the time when you think about a ghost, you pop into that Hollywood vision. Oh, poltergeist, horror movies, Amityville Horror, a variety of different movies that are out there which almost completely get everything wrong that there is to get wrong about ghosts and demons. And just think about the things that are common and everyday in your life that you just don't pay attention to, and that's more likely to lead you to the recognition that there's somebody else in your home, as opposed to waiting for this big momentous occasion that happens where in Hollywood they have a ghost appear. I regularly go to cemeteries. I love cemeteries. They're my favorite place. My husband thinks I'm crazy. But I like to go to cemeteries because it's a very calm place for me. I've been going to them, I think it was 6 years old when I first discovered my first one, from my mom's best friend's cottage up north in Michigan. And when they couldn't find me, they'd go look for me in the cemetery, and I would just be sitting there, just taking in the sight. I like to look at the headstones in that. But one of the things that I do is, remember I said that sometimes when ghosts don't get that energy in, they start going into a vegetative state. You can actually find some in the cemetery environment that are in that somnolent state, where they're not really there, but they're not gone. They can't go on themselves. They need help to help them shift on. And it's a bit more complex than just saying, go into the light, because that doesn't cut it. You got to create the light, which is actually a portal, and you have to help them go through the light, because a lot of times they're too afraid, because most people who don't go through it are afraid because of some kind of religious indoctrination that told them that they were a bad person, and that when they died they were going to go to hell or some purgatory or some other place. And so they don't want to cross over, because they don't want to be subjected to some form of torture because they lived their life and they might have done something bad at some point in time, or they lived a normal life which really wasn't bad, but somebody had told them that they were a bad person. So I don't want to encourage anybody to start walking around and telling things to go into the light, because that's not going to work. That whole scenario does not work. So let's talk a little bit about detritus. Detritus is different from ghosts and demons. Ghosts were dead people. They still think, even though they're dead, but they don't have the large capacity for long-term philosophy here. They just remember who they were and remember patterns, and they can think a little bit about things. Demons range from not so smart to extremely intelligent, and they're very manipulative in that intelligence, because they're going to get what they want. Detritus, on the other hand, is generally created by people. If you've ever gone to a sporting event, like a sports arena, or even, a local bar where they've got the TVs on and everybody's screaming for their local team or whatever, detritus exists in these places, usually floating overhead like a little cloud. It's like a little amorphous cloud, and it's floating around, and it's actually sucking in all of the negative energy that people have in that place, because people get very passionate about their games. They get very upset about their sports team winning or not winning, and that's a lot of energy that's being thrown out there. And so these things feed on that type of energy. There's other things that also exist as detritus, and one of those categories is what I call portals. Portals are fairly common, and just as you might think, it's like I see it as a round shape. It could, I suppose, be square shape, but I always envision them as a round shape. And the portal is a two-way pass through, and it's created by somebody who's in a different reality, and they use it to look in and to track people and to find people. And it's used by a variety of different beings, all negative. This is not, your angel's not creating a portal and peeking at you. Your angel's going to be standing with you. They don't need to create a portal. Portals are created by beings that aren't necessarily supposed to be here right now. They're not supposed to be interfering, and yet they create these portals, and they'll spy on you, or they'll find the person that they want to attach to, and they'll use the portal to come through into this reality and attach to that person. This is what you're feeling if you're feeling an icy spot somewhere. They don't always put off icy spot feelings, but if you're in a home and you're walking down the hallway and all of a sudden you get this cold chill that comes over you, you just walked right through a portal, because they exist everywhere. They can be on the ceilings, the floors, the walls. They can be in the middle of a space, just hanging there, because it doesn't need a structure, a physical structure, to actually exist. These are not good things. These are things that need to be removed, because you deserve to have your privacy. You deserve not to be spied on. You deserve not to be attacked by detrimental energy beings. They happen. They're in our environment. It's just something to be aware of. The next thing I want to talk about are wells. And wells are actually a pool of energy that gathers in the ground level. And what it is it's like a pool of water. If you want to think about water as it drains down into a lower level area, negative energies do that. They gather into one space. And depending on the size of the well, that can be very uncomfortable. I did some clearing work a number of years ago in North Carolina in an area that used to have been a Native American environment. And there was 3 large wells in that environment. And what I discovered was that there was somebody within the tribe unit at some point in time, and that person had actually murdered multiple people and hidden their bodies in the environment that I was working in. And so we did some work and we cleared that all out. But the thing that was very interesting about this particular situation is that anybody who stayed in the house on the property had nightmares. The people who lived there had nightmares every night. People who came to visit had nightmares if they stayed overnight. Everybody had a bad dream. And that is one of the things that the wells cause. They're huge pools of negative energy, and it leaks out. It's not a contained environment. It's not got a lid on it that's not going to hurt anybody if they walk by it. It's just like everything else, and it's open to the environment and the energy that moves back and forth, and it'll reach out and it'll share. And sometimes that sharing can be very unpleasant. I have a client back in North Carolina who contacted me earlier in the spring. They had passed by a deer processing plant, which was really kind of like a little shack on the side of the road, but that's where the hunters took all of their dead deer and they processed it there. And it had gathered quite a lot of negative energy in the well there. And they figured that out because when they went by there, they would have a rage of emotions. I mean, they were just angry, and they would be happy, and they'd be driving by, and all of a sudden they'd be angry, they'd be upset, they'd be screaming at each other. Not a fun situation, but it's one of the things that can happen when you have a well, and wells happen everywhere. They're in the urban city, out in the country. About the first time I ever encountered a demon. And I have a very dear friend who had children same age as my children, and his elder child had been sent home from school. They actually had to go pick him up. He was about 8 at the time, and he was being sent home because he had cornered a girl in the cafeteria and said highly sexual, very inappropriate things to her. not only, pinning her in the area, not letting her go, which made her upset, but the things that he said were, according to the teacher, extremely graphic, and they were upset because this was a Christian school and that was inappropriate behavior, no matter what school you were at. But they were considering expelling him because of the language, and they had a strong talking with my friend because that's inappropriate, for the children to be learning. And they're like, okay, where did he get it from? And they're trying to think about the different areas that the child could have seen it. Was it a movie? Did somebody, watch a movie while they were babysitting the kids and didn't realize that they were taking all that in? Well, they pretty much negated just about every possibility. And so he was pretty upset. So he called me and he said, can you just look at him? Is there a problem child attached to him that's causing him to say these things? And I'm like, well, that's a possibility. Let's look at him. Well, what I found when I looked at him was actually something different. And it was the darkness that was covering the top of his head, going all the way up to the chakra above his head, which is where your high self is located. And this darkness had basically cut off the channel between your high self and the top of your head, which is the seventh chakra, basically cutting off the ability of the high self to communicate with the person in a clear manner. So I'm looking at that and I'm like, what is that? And I was helped to realize that this was a demon. This was my very first form of a demon. And it was really kind of upsetting because at that point in time in my life, I was in the all is love, all is happy, there's nothing bad out there really kind of mentality. And when I realized what this was, when I had it explained to me by Archangel Michael, who was the one who led my education on this, it was very upsetting because we don't want to believe that demons exist. Demons are a boogeyman that the Catholic Church told people to make them behave. It's a boogeyman that other people have created to scare little children or to explain things that they couldn't explain. I have encountered thousands of different types of demons, and the truth about it is that they are attached to everyone. There's nobody who doesn't have some number of demons attached to them. It isn't like The Exorcist, where there's one massive demon that's attached to the person and their head spins around and they spew goo out. That doesn't happen. Very few times are you ever going to find that form of a physical manifestation. That is because if they take over and you have a full body possession, they want to stay in the body. They don't want you to know that they're there. So they do their best to continue acting like the person who owns the body, who is in the body normally. These are situations that are kind of freaky for most people because they don't want to think about it. But I just want you to know that everybody has them. They exist in our environment, and some of them are very childish. Some of them only have the intellect of maybe a 3-year-old, but they have an effect on people. They can influence their emotional state. They can take a happy day and all of a sudden have people screaming at each other for no reason at all, just because they're tweaking somebody's energetic state of being. And so it's one of those situations that when people start behaving in ways that really aren't their normal, that I like to start looking at it for a level of influence. Everybody has demons attached to them, but they're at usually a certain percentage of influence. It's when they get to the 90 to 95% level of influence that the full body possession can actually take place. Most people are wandering around in the 50 to 60% influence rate. So they have them attached to them, but they're not actually being overtly taken over by them. Demons have abilities that people don't understand. Most people think it's a joke, but demons can reach into your mind. They can pull out the things that scare you, that manipulate you. They can talk in the back of your mind, so you think you're just talking to yourself, but you're actually talking with a demon that's telling you things. And the more power that you give to them during their inhabitation with you, the more they can move forward with taking over in situations. Very specific types of demons are actually the ones that do the full body, and those are relatively rare. But the more influenced you are, the larger number of demonics that you have attached to you makes you that much more vulnerable. Think of it like this. You might know somebody who's what they call a functioning alcoholic. They drink so much alcohol every day, they kind of become numb to the alcohol, and they still do their day to day, and they go about doing stuff. It's just they've reached this plateau point where they just take in all of that alcohol, and they just function. They just do their job. They're not really living, but they're going through the motions. That's what people are like when they're about 70 to 80% influence rate. They're going through the motions. They're not really living. They're not really enjoying life. They're just going along with the flow. When people tell you that they're hearing a voice in their head, it's not necessarily schizophrenia rearing its ugly head, because demonics have the ability to talk to everyone regardless of whether they are clairaudient or not. And so you can hear this voice in the back of your mind, and it's telling you things. And sometimes it tells you good things, and sometimes it tells you bad things. Sometimes they'll tell you things that seem positive, uplifting even, and then something will happen and somebody will get hurt from the actions that you take because you listen to the voice in your head. One of the cases I dealt with, I've had several over the years where people did not want to release their demons. One was a writer who thought the demon was this muse, and if he got rid of this particular demon, that he would stop writing. I knew a shaman who she insisted that she needed her demons attached to her because that helped her be balanced. And I had a young man who I worked with for a while who was first isolated by this demon when he was about 2 years old. The demon had actually jumped from his mother over to him as a 2-year-old. And this happens. There's nothing that's going to safeguard you from a demon attaching to you except learning how to deal and heal your issues, because they attach to you because you emit a particular vibration. And this vibration is stemming from the wounds that you have inside of you. I've worked with people who, people who start to go into that 90-95% influence rate, where they're getting to the point where they're going to start being possessed, start talking about them. They are telling you this. They are telling them that. They won't tell you who the them is, but they'll tell you what the them said. And they're not going to tell you who it is because they can't tell you. They can't say it's the voices in their head. But it wears them down. It can create a cycle of where the person thinks they're crazy, but then they don't want to admit it. But the reality is the demons, every time they're in there and they're working and the person responds to what they say, they work in a little bit deeper. Once you hit that 95% influence rate, it's going to most likely go into a physical possession. And a lot of times that's short in duration in the beginning. But a lot of times when you're at that level, the demons that are attached to you have already isolated you away from the people who love you. They've taken steps, just like somebody who might be an emotional abuser in a relationship. The demons do the same thing. And they separate you away from the ones who love you, who might help you in some way. And that way they are the only ones who are talking to you. They're the only ones sharing with you. And it can become quite a little cacophony going on in your head with the voices. But their whole point of existing and staying with you is to get to that point where they take over your body, and then they can do other things. And we're not going to get into that at this point because that's way beyond what this little brief intro can do. I do want to say, when people are possessed, 80 to 100% level influence rate, they're not going to change regardless of what you are trying to tell them. And it might be hard to swallow. I mean, I know people out there have dealt with family members and friends who become addicts. This is also a type of addiction, if you will. It becomes a codependent situation where they're feeding off the demon and the demon is feeding off of them. And that person isn't going to trust anybody but the demon at that point. They're going to do whatever they want to do, and I strongly suggest that if you are around somebody who is doing this, whose behavior has changed, who treats people differently than they've ever treated them before, realize that that person is no longer the person that you knew. Doesn't matter what profession they're in. It doesn't matter how old they are. I've seen it happen to small children. I've seen it happen to older people. I've seen it happen to ministers. I've seen it happen to school teachers. You name it, you are vulnerable regardless of the situation that you live in. And until you heal the vibrations inside of you that are calling the demons to you, it's not going to happen. Exorcist doesn't happen that way. If it was so easy to get rid of one demon and then you could go on living in your life, that would make life a lot easier and it would be a lot less complicated. But it's not that easy. So I'm going to close out the show today with a couple things I want to share with you, reiterating some of the stuff that we discussed and a few other things. Ghosts, discarnates, whatever you want to call them, they love to be around people. Pay attention to where you are, when you are, where you are, to see if you all of a sudden start feeling exhausted in an abnormal way. If you've just run a marathon, obviously you're going to be physically exhausted. But if you're feeling great and then all of a sudden you are physically exhausted, something is draining you. Something needs to be paid attention to at that point. Physical sensations are key indicators of detritus. Cold spots, feelings of where your emotions are going out of control, things like that are key points that there's something there that doesn't need to be there and needs to be removed. People who have a high influence level or possession level often want to touch other people, which is counteractive to what you would think. You would think they wouldn't want to touch anybody. And it's a weird little thing, but they'll reach out to grab you, to hold you, to touch you. And that's actually a transference process. They're being typhoid Mary at that point, and they're passing things to you. So if you've got somebody that you've got concerns about, avoiding physical contact with them is usually the best course of action to protect yourself and definitely your children. If somebody's insisting that they want to touch your child, please don't let them. You have to hold your children sacred to you, because once they encounter those kinds of beings, those demons, they don't have any form of emotional or mental protection against them. You have to protect your children. Hollywood has simplified and glorified demon possession, hauntings, things like that. Real trauma can result result from the high influence level and the demonic possession. It doesn't just go away. It doesn't just return you back to where you're feeling when these things are gone. Just like your arm gets broken, it's never 100% the way it used to be. Even if it's straight, even if the doctor says it's fully healed properly, it's got a break in it. And that's a vulnerability point. So if another accident could happen, you could possibly break that bone again because it's in a weakened state. Your home is not a safe place. It's not a magical safe place. When you walk in the door and you shut the door, you're not instantly safe from these things that are out there. So you are the only person who can take care of you. You have to be aware of what you might be encountering. You have to be aware of what is happening to you on the physical level as well. For those of you who want to try some early stages of protecting yourself, my first go-to is always sage. When you burn sage, and no, this isn't the herb sage that you put in the kitchen. This is a particular type of sage that is harvested from bushes, and you burn them. It's very stinky. It's very stinky. A lot of times it smells like pot. It's not pleasant to smell, but sage creates an energetic barrier for about 24 hours. And that will give you some breathing room. So if there's something in your space, you don't know what it is, sage it. If it's detrimental, it's going to leave. If it's not detrimental, then there's other things that you need to take into consideration. There are no particular dates that are sacred to demons or ghosts, so it doesn't matter if it's Christmas. It doesn't matter if you have a cross in the room. It doesn't matter if you have a Bible and you're reading out of it. The only thing that fights them off is your strength of will and how much you believe that you are the one taking care of you and what you truly, truly want. So this is Julia Knickerbocker, and this has been the Spiritual Mentor on IntellectualRadio.com, where we feed your brain very interesting and weird things. Please join me next Monday at 4 p.m. for the next session of the Spiritual Mentor. You can only hear this information here on Intellectual Radio, where we feed your brain. Thank you for joining me today. Check out my website, thespiritualmentor.org. I am archangelariel.com and shreddingthedarknesswithin.org, which is going to give you more information like what we talked about today. Thank you so much and have a blessed week.
You're tuned at IntellectualRadio.com.
Yo. Welcome to the Lady T and Comedian Psych Show, the TNS show. Right now, we're still missing out on Psych. Psych's be back Monday. You know, he's on bed rest right now. Him being on bed rest, it's like, wow, he's going to call in. He said he's going to call in, to give updates on what's going on with him. So, which is a good thing. That's at the 2:00 hour. That's about next 10 minutes. We'll be hearing from Sykes. So we had a lot of stuff that's going on. The weather changes, and hot, the blue line going down. The buses getting into the accident this morning, hit 3 kids and operators in the hospital. That's the question. We're trying to figure out who was at fault at this point. It's been on the news all morning. It happened in Boys Town. So you have the number 8 Halsted bus. I just want to keep all my coworkers in prayer at this point. There's so much going on out there. We tell people, we pray over our buses every day, and if they pray over their L's every day. And what trips me out about the yesterday situation with the weather, it stopped the blue line, red and pink, brown, anything that was going east, westbound, southbound, because of the debris within itself. It tore up the expressway. When that went down, they're trying to figure out, was it man problems or was it lightning strike? My thing is this: they always gonna try to pull the man, and and it's crazy for them to do that, but that's neither here nor there with that. But well, I'm here by myself today, and we're gonna talk about a few things that's been on my mind lately, and then we're gonna have some call-ins, which would be cool. We waiting on Sykes to call in about the 2:00 hour. And when we talk to Sykes, have him, make sure that he's good. Because, we missing him right now. Aren't we missing him? Yeah, me and the super producer missing him right now. Yeah, he should be fine. He a growing boy. I hope he drinking his milk. But he going to have to change the "I'm not sober" hashtag to "I'm sober" at this point, because he can't do nothing. Oh boy, but tune in. I need y'all to tune in today. I'll be by myself. It ain't like I ain't do it by myself before, but it's cool. I'm still putting out there that we are looking for a third co-host for our show, for just in case messages, if I can't make it, he can't make it, or we all here together and all that good stuff. First thing I want to throw out there, the Bears camp started this week, and I'll be there. Always gonna be there. But got to get out there and see what we got new on the field. We got White out there that he may play this year. They say he in the clear to play, which is cool. And I'm going live now. I don't like how that sounds. It sounds funny. All them beeps and stuff like that. But we ran into like a minute problem. Well, I ran into a minute problem when it came down to these guests that's supposed to be coming in. I guess they bigger than what they are now. They're getting too big for their britches. Before, you got to remember where you came from, for real, and who promotes you, and who got you out there, or who your fan base is, and who follows you, and who supports you. That's my whole thing with that. But we have a lot to talk about. But let me I'm gonna take a quick break because we starting up a little late, and got to talk about it. So we tune in to the Lady T and Comedian Psych Show. This is the TNS show, and Lady T by herself right now, but that's okay. We're about to hear from Sykes in a minute. Holler at you in a sec. Yeah, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. This is Lady T of the Lady T and Comedian Psych Show, the TNS show on IntellectualRadio.com. You have anything on your mind you want to talk about, you can give us a call here at 708 223 8953. 708 223 8953. So, what's going on with y'all out here in the world today? I done ran into so much stuff. We're expecting a phone call in a little bit from one of our, which is my co-host. He's not here with us today. He's at home in bed rest because of doctor's orders. But he's gonna give us a call to check in. That's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to be checking in with everybody. He had us a little worried about it last week. A little bit. Well, he went in a week before, but he had us a little worried. Like, what's going on? He didn't respond back. He was in so much pain. Wound up in the hospital and been in the hospital and all this other stuff. It's terrible. You got to get your life in order, man. Your health is very serious, you guys. And you need to get out there and get checked out. Some of you men out here just don't want to do right. I'm just saying. Checkups, like the super producer. Do you get your checkups? Mm-hmm. Yeah, got to. You may be nervous because you like, oh my God, I don't know what this is gonna say. You got that white coat syndrome. Oh, you got to get that checked out, man. You. From what I know, the men y'all have to get your prostates together too. You got to get that checked out. If you scared to get that checked out, I don't know what to say. Go get it together. Some of the women out here do the same thing. You need to get that together because you've been walking around here have colon cancer and not know it, and just be like, oh, you're dropping weight. Why? I don't know. You bleeding, there's stool and blood in your stool, all kind of